Well, here we are again, talking about the winch. I made a video on the winch back in season 10, which had talked about some of the issues people had with it. Like it was completely broken, no skill, a free kill. You get winch and you get taken state to state. I talked about it, what it was really used for, and its identity in the finals, and how I think it has a place in the game unchanged from where it was. Now, flash forward to today, Season 11 has dropped along with a new Melee rework. They reworked the whole system, and along with it, in Season 11, they kind of nerfed the winch. Big shocker there. Only the finals video I've seen on my For You page is complaining about the winch. So it's just so crazy that they decided to do something about it. Anyway, I'm not going to touch on the Melee rework too much because that's just a whole other can of worms. Fly High, Riot Shield. I picked that up during Season 10. That was the most fun I've had on Medium in a while. Anyway, the point I'm getting at is that with this new reworked system, they changed quick melee and it went from an elbow that did 40 damage and did not move anyone. It had been in the game since the start and things had been balanced around it, certain breakpoints and whatnot. I'll touch on that more later. But with the new reworked system, they nerfed or changed, depending on how you view it, the quick melee. They dropped the damage from 40 to 25, and they introduced, instead of just an elbow, a kick. Now, since it's a kick, it obviously moves you away. When they're up in your face and you have enough stamina, you can kick them away about 5 meters, I'm pretty sure. And this was, I'm assuming, meant by the devs to be a way to combat close range weapons. I would say specifically melee weapons, to maybe balance out the new rework, which they thought was going to completely solve melee weapons and make them all meta in higher skill lobbies. But once again, not going to touch on that too much. Now, back to Winchclaw. At the start of Season 11, it was nerfed. They decreased the minimum stun duration on the victim from 0.25 seconds to 0.1 seconds. They also decreased the amount of time the victim was locked in place and prevented from moving when they reached the destination from 0.15 seconds to 0.1 second. And they decreased how soon the winch user can actually act after grabbing a player from 0.25 seconds to 0.1 seconds, which actually allows the winch user to act sooner. And on its own, these changes to winch made it feel a little bit worse to use, but they're kind of understandable. A lower duration means you can get going and act quicker, and both parties, can get this thing moving. So I'm not entirely opposed to it. But the problem, and I don't know if this was an unintended side effect from NPark, is that the nerf to winch paired with this new kick that they introduced, both of these changes combined are kind of putting the winch on life support, so to speak. And with this change, let's say you land a winch on someone. Well, instead of you having kind of a stun window to do some damage, maybe have your teammates dogpile on this poor soul. Well, now you winch someone and then you get kicked about 9 years away. And if it's a heavy, God forbid they pull up their mesh shield. And then, you two are running around like a bunch of chuds because you're trying to chase him so that your winch is not in vain. But then, he's just moonwalking back to his team, which completely resets the engagement, draws it out, and makes the winch, your winch, a bit of a waste. Which kind of defeats the purpose of the winch claw, like I talked about in my last video, that it's a weapon to disrupt fights, force an engagement, pulling someone out of position to create an opportunity for yourself and your team. Now, I'm not saying winch claw is completely dead and buried. In lower skill lobbies, you winch someone and most of the time they just panic, and depending on the weapon you have, you could just instantly kill them. With the sole exception of the overhead hit from the sledgehammer, because, side note, I tried using winch with sledge and that overhead attack does not work at all. The only way to use the sledgehammer is with the winch, it's just spamming the M1. But I mean, charge is a lot more fun with it anyway. You're just basically a living wrecking ball. Anyway, this kind of culminates in winch not really being worth using over mesh shield in harder lobbies because of the points I just talked about. Now, I hear you ask, what a terrible problem we have. What might be a solution? Well, thank you for asking. I believe there are a couple ways we can go about it and restore the winch claw and kind of give it some of its identity back. One, I would say, is to give it the stun duration back and to basically restore it to how it was in Season 10. So in that way, it kind of counteracts the new kick, which makes it completely useless. It just obliterates it. Another change would be to make quick melee have 40 damage, because doing so kind of preserves more of the breakpoints for a lot of the heavy weapons. And this would be kind of a more general fix for the other classes, so you're not constantly leaving people on 1 HP or less. You're crying out, he's one shot, when he actually is. Very rare. Last but not least, and don't crucify me for this, we bring back the ability for Winchclaw to pull people through shields. I know. Sounds like I'm off the deep end, but I want you to take a step back and remember, what is the Winchclaw used for? What is its purpose? Disrupting people. And one of the best ways for it to be would be, snagging people out of the dome or a mesh so that you do not have to wait an eternity for an engagement. Get through infinite healing balls, heal beams, agent abuser, domes, mesh. You can get to going immediately. We could have a way to make the game fun and fast-paced. Because at the end of the day, if we keep continuing in this direction of non-stop nerfs to things, we are going to lose what makes this game the finals. But hey, what do I know? The complainers won.